Okay, so I think the numbers have stopped going up now, so I will start. So thank you very much for joining us here this evening to our Cambridge Executive MBA networking event for women. We're really pleased to have you here this evening. This is a very informal session, so it's not an information session where we run through a presentation and tell you about the programme. It's simply an opportunity for you to meet some of our women participants and alumni and to ask them any questions that you like about their experience of the programme. Here tonight is myself. My name's Alison and I am Head of Marketing and Admissions for the Executive MBA programme. And I'm joined by Jack, who is running the show tonight and who also works in marketing. Jack. Our three alums and participants are Brooke Bornick, who is a member of the 2016 cohort. Brooke is CFO and runs a company called Lodger. She'll tell you more about this in a moment, but I think it's a luxury holiday apartment business, and she can tell you more details about that a bit later. Emma Kent, who is one of our current participants in the 2019 cohort. Emma is a construction director for the Metropolitan Police and based in London. Brooke, I should have said, is based in Texas. And then we have Anchi Wang, who is also a member of the 2019 cohort based in London. And Anchi is engineering and program integrator for the Transport for London. So I'm going to leave them now to introduce themselves in more detail, and then you can ask your questions in the Q&A section, and Jack will facilitate this for us. Okay, thank you everybody, and I hope you enjoy this evening's session. So over to Brooke.
Thanks, Alison. I'm American, you can tell by the accent. I spent about a decade as a lawyer here in Texas, working in restructuring and financial litigation, and I wanted a new label, wanted to do something different. So I went back for the EMBA in 2016. And from there I pivoted and I tried a bunch of consulting projects in different areas, legal tech, food tech, different things. I ended up working in private equity on the investments team and also with oversight over an operations portfolio for real estate and healthcare. And now I am general counsel and CFO and sort of all hands on deck for a startup my husband created. I met him on the cohort, and before COVID, we were a hospitality startup. Now we are a prop tech startup, and it's been a wild ride and a lot of fun.
Hi, everyone. Oh, sorry, Jack, is it okay? Should I jump in?
Yeah, absolutely, please.
Yeah, great. Hi, so pleased to see some of you joining the call this evening. My name's Emma Kent. I started my executive MBA in September 2019. So I'm getting towards the end of that EMBA journey, and we'll graduate this summer. Before I did my EMBA, I'd worked, much like Brooke, I'd been working for about 10 years as an engineer. I trained as a civil engineer. So I had a master's in civil engineering and I was a chartered engineer, or still am. And primarily working in consultancy with design companies, working on designing new buildings, refurbishments, that kind of thing. But just before I started the EMBA, I moved to a client-side role as construction director for the Metropolitan Police. So I look after a portfolio of capital projects, spending around £150 million per year on construction works for police stations, but also for boat wharfs, training academies, stables, dog kennels, helipads, all sorts of anything that's investment in property for the Met Police is what I do. And I guess I'm going to hand over to Anchi, who's also part of my cohort.
Thank you, Emma. Hi, everyone. My name is Anshi Wang. I have the pleasure of being in the same class as Emma. So I joined the EMBA in September 2019 as well. For my educational background, I am an engineer by training also. I am electronic and electrical engineering. Did this in Birmingham for my bachelor's, and then for my master's, I went to LSE to study the managerial economics. For my professional background, I've been working primarily in the UK railways industry. So I started in higher education as liaison between universities and the rail industry for research and education. And then I went into engineering consultancy, where for the longest time I was working for all of the rail projects that you can think of in this country I've worked on. And just like Emma, actually, right before my EMBA journey started, I went over to the client side, and I'm now working for Transport for London, where I'm looking after the interactions between different systems being upgraded at the same time. So train, signalling system, civil infrastructure, all of them are being changed at the same time. So their interactions will require careful management because they're complex. So I guess you can say I am sort of in between an engineering manager and a program manager. So that's what I do currently.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And thank you, everyone. So just so everyone knows, through this session, I'm going to be asking a number of questions, but really we'd love to hear from you as well, to everybody in the audience. So if you have any questions, please throw them in the Q&A box, anything about the program or our panel's experience on the program. We'd love to hear it, so that's the place to do it. So I'm going to start by asking, and I'll start with you, Brooke, if that's okay. How did you know that you'd reached a point, personally and professionally, when you to know that you were ready to invest in an executive MBA?
I had wanted to change my career for years. I was bored with what I was doing, but it was really hard to be considered for anything that wasn't a legal role because I couldn't get rid of that label. And so for me, it was about getting a new label. So that's what my motivation was for joining. However, once I was there, it was just like a whole world of possibilities opened up. And I realized that investments and buying and growing companies was really what I was passionate about.
Okay, and Emma?
Yeah, so again, yeah, similar to Brooke, you get to a point in your career where you've become a very technical specialist in whatever your field is, whether that's law or in my case, engineering. And you start to think, if I want to make that next step, I need to broaden my perspective a little bit. And I started to look at really sort of what the gaps are in the engineering industry and the construction industry. And I realized, there's a lot of people with great technical expertise, but without the more broad-ranging business skills. And I felt that I wanted to equip myself with the skills to actually run a business, or even to start my own business. And so I guess from a professional perspective, it was kind of like, yeah, I've got this experience in the bank, but how can I get ready to take the next step in my career? On a personal level, I mean, obviously, there's being in a position, where financially you're ready to take on the course fees and so on. That's an important consideration. And also, recently I'd got married, and I had my first child just before starting the EMBA. And so it seemed like, yeah, this is now a good time to focus on me again for a bit. So yeah, I think it was good timing, definitely.
Glad to hear it. Anshi, how about you?
Yes, for me, it's very similar. I'd done pretty well for my age in my chosen industry. And then I started thinking about, how do I scale up as a manager? Because I was leading an engineering consulting team of 15 people, working on various projects and so on. But I had to be very hands-on with what I did in order to make them very successful. So I started thinking about, well, how do I be a manager of 100 people or 500 people, that sort of thing. So that was a question that I couldn't answer at the time. Secondly, I felt, maybe this is unfair, but for me, the rail industry that I had worked in felt a little bit insular. So we didn't always know what the best practice would be outside of our industry. And I felt that we weren't in the news always for the good reasons. So I wanted to understand a little bit better, you know, how were things done elsewhere? What were the buzzwords and, you know, new things being considered in other industries? And those were the primary reasons for me to consider my MBA as well. And in terms of the timing, you know, just like Emma said, cheekily, I was planning my having the first baby with doing the MBA. So I thought, you know, if I was going to do one, I might as well do both.
Fantastic, thank you. And so you kind of touched on, Anchi, well, actually all of you, that you were looking for skills to complement your technical specialisms that you all have individually developed. Did you identify kind of anything specific at the start, or was it kind of a journey of going into it, knowing that you wanted to become a stronger leader and just seeing kind of where it took you? Anchi, if you could start.
I think answering that question today, I give a very different answer to the one I would have given at the beginning. At the beginning, I thought I needed to understand more about money, because as an engineer, I really didn't understand how money worked. So I really wanted to understand better, both in the classroom and also from my fellow classmates, how the financial markets worked. And to that extent, I did understand that a little bit better, so that was achieved. But actually, having done the majority of the course now, I feel there were many more softer how to manage yourself, how to manage other people, and what were the interactions within an organization, those sort of frameworks that ended up being very, very beneficial to my role.
Emma, how about you?
Yeah, I think the MBA kind of equips you with this really broad set of skills. You do start off with those fundamentals that Angie mentioned of the, you know, corporate finance, accountancy, economics, and those are actually really great foundations for some of the courses that you follow after that. So I think in terms of those building those kind of that base for your business acumen, I think it's really important. But then, yeah, you go on to develop on such a wide range of topics, from strategy management, innovation management, operations, organizational behavior. And you really start to see how all these different skills and subject areas actually interact with each other as you kind of build throughout the course. So yeah, I think with COVID having affected our course as well, you know, some of those more reflective pieces around management praxis and how you operate yourself as a leader have actually provided me with really, really valuable insights that I've been using ever since, you know, COVID came about as well. So I think it's that breadth that I found so useful.
Mm-hmm. And Brooke, as the only alumna on the panel with a couple of years of post-MBA experience, has there been anything that kind of really surprised you about something that you perhaps learned on the program that you've applied in your work since?
To be honest, just working with other teams of people who were sort of equal or lateral to me was something I'd never done before professionally. In law firms, you don't do that. You either work alone or you work hierarchically with, you know, a partner who's more senior, a more junior, you know, person, that sort of thing. So I'd never done that before. And I'd never really learned much about what it was like to work in an organization. Law firms don't have HR departments and marketing departments and all this stuff. We don't have meetings. It was sort of an introduction to business culture for me. So the hard skills, the finance, economics, all of that wasn't so much of new material to me, but a lot of the soft skills were. I think of getting an MBA as sort of a T, right? So you have depth in whatever your primary area is, and then you gain sort of a less deep, you know, more shallow but broad base of knowledge across a lot of areas. And like Emma was saying, it's understanding how they interact together, that gives you a bit more wisdom and insight to take back to work.
Okay, and so it sounds like for all of you, kind of a big part of the decision to take an executive MBA was the kind of the network building aspect. So I wonder how your network and, you know, both on the MBA and the wider Cambridge network, if that's applicable to any of you, has impacted your career so far and how you kind of anticipate it will continue to in the future. Brooke, if you want to.
Sure. So for me, the network wasn't actually a big reason for me to apply. Living in the US, it didn't seem very relevant, but the network ended up being the best part of the program for me, bar none. Anyone in the 2016 cohort will tell you that. We are incredibly tight. I wake up every day to about 30 or 40 WhatsApp messages in our group chat. There's the side chat for the women, the side chat for the North American alumni, the side chat for this. It's not like a LinkedIn connection. These are people, you could call it 3 a.m. for bail money. It's a very powerful connection. These are the people who help you figure out how to negotiate for the best offer when you get that new job, and how to prep you for whatever that big milestone is that you're about to reach. They cheer each other on. It's incredibly powerful. I have an expert I can call on in any industry, any skill, and they will drop everything to help. And that's incredibly powerful.
That's fantastic. And Emma and Anchi, you're obviously your networking aspect has been disrupted in person a little bit by COVID over the last year. But I wonder how much of a decision maker it was for you and how it's been so far. Emma?
So yeah, I think, I mean, you know, our cohort's very similar. You know, there's the WhatsApp group for this and that, and everyone talks all the time despite COVID. So that is really good. I think in terms of influencing my decision, it actually was part of my decision, because part of me, and I'm still not certain it's all of me, but part of me thought that the Ember might be the start of my entrepreneurial journey. And I had always in my mind that I might meet a co-founder who wanted to start a business with me on the Ember cohort. And so, yeah, so that was kind of quite an influencer for me, because I knew I'd got these technical skills, but if you want to start a business, maybe you want to find someone who's got the legal skills or the financial skills or the marketing skills or whatever's, you know, relevant to your business. So it was quite a big, that was quite a big draw to me. And, you know, there's quite a good entrepreneur kind of ecosystem in Cambridge. I think doing that, being part of that in COVID means, you know, you need to reach out and ask for that help and ask for that support a bit more. It's maybe not as tangible, but the network is definitely there, the wider Cambridge network, if you want to tap into it. So yeah, I think it was quite a big influence for me applying.
And for me as well, I think at the beginning, I thought I would gain a lot of weak connections. So by that, I mean people who were acquaintances and who you respect and have a conversation with and so on. But actually what I ended up getting was both weak connections and strong connections, in that not only do I know a lot of people who were experts in their respective fields, but those are my actual dear friends as well. So I think that's really unexpected. And I think going through the intensive course, the doing the homework together, the doing the consulting project together, you really are bonded in a very unique way, and that's very, very valuable. But equally, you have, for me, that's the very unique part about Cambridge compared to the other programs, I think, is that you have the wider university to fall back on as well. Being geographically sort of flexible for me personally is important. So as I think about moving country, for example, I always have the Cambridge alumni of that select country to tap into as my way in. So I think both in terms of strong and weak connections, it was very important. And this program has been very beneficial for me.
That's lovely to hear. Anchi, you touched on the team consulting project there, and we've had a question come in from Nicoletta. Thank you, Nicoletta. And anybody else, please drop your questions in the Q&A box and we'll get to those throughout. Nicoletta would like to know a bit more about the team consulting project and everybody's experience of doing that. Brooke, would you like to start?
Mine was incredible. I really got the chance to work outside of the legal field for the first time. One of my very dear friends, Ali, on my team messaged Impossible Foods and got us a placement there. And it was just an amazing experience. We advised them on their go-to-market strategy in Europe. And I am so tight now with my TCP group. It was really, really amazing. And I will say my advice, if you do the program, when you find an interesting organization that you want to work for, message their highest level person you can find on LinkedIn, because there's no spam filters. And we got really far with quite a few really big name companies that we were excited about just by doing that. But it was really powerful. I got a lot of great experience. I leveraged that into doing my IP on social impact and how you would scale that in VC back to startups, and what are the more successful business models and less successful models and all of that. And it was just, it was a very powerful experience. I was excited about it.
Sounds fantastic. And Emma, you worked on Made in Great Britain, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. The reason I grinned when Brooke said she worked for Impossible Foods is because we'd actually shortlisted Impossible Foods as a company that we'd really like to work with for our TCP. So I was intrigued to hear that you'd worked with them. Yeah, we worked with an organisation called Made in Britain, which is a member organisation representing small and medium-sized, primarily manufacturing businesses in Great Britain. And we basically developed a sustainability accreditation tool for their members to help them understand like where they are on the journey of sustainability and the journey towards achieving a sort of circular business model. And for me, the TCP was an opportunity for a few different things. Firstly, I wanted to do something outside of my comfort zone, so not working in construction. That was kind of number one. Then secondly, I formed a group with 3 others. So there was 4 of us in our group, and we really wanted to do something that had kind of a social impact. So ideally, looking at the kind of big picture climate change, that sort of area was really interesting to us. And thirdly, obviously, we were doing our TCP again during COVID. So, you know, we had to think slightly differently about how we could interact with our client, how we could interact with each other, and that kind of thing. So this was a great opportunity for us because we were actually able to do some face-to-face sessions with our client here in the UK. So that meant, you know, actually we did our draft presentation to the client with the client in the room. Before, when we did our final presentation, we had a much wider group of people at the final presentation, including the whole board from Made in Britain. We had someone from the United Nations dial in for our final presentation, which we were pretty pleased about. And loads of great stuff has come out of it as well. Like I presented the Albati Parliamentary Manufacturing Group last week to talk about how we can get SMEs, small and medium-sized businesses or enterprises on this sustainability journey, how it's not just something for big businesses. Really, it's opened some new doors, some new opportunities for me to broaden my network and to get some exposure personally as well. So yeah, it's been transformative.
That sounds really amazing. And I know that Made in Britain have been in touch with us over the last few weeks as well to say, we really want to put some more projects to for your students because we had such a great experience last time. So good.
That's great.
Anchi, how about you?
So TCP, Team Consulting Project, was one of my favorite modules. I think it's very well designed by the business school. It's like a social experiment that started in February last year. First, it's like, who do you select amongst the 100-odd cohort to be your team members? And it was real drama. It's like going to prom, and who do you select to go to the prom with? Then we had to consider sourcing our own projects. We ended up working for the Icelandic national power company. So the power company produces 70% of all of the electricity generated in Iceland. And we did a consulting project with them and answered the question of what should their growth strategy be about, and should there be an international element of it? And if so, what should it be? So it was very, very interesting in that through managing the team selection, team forming, through to delivering a consulting service, we actually did practice almost everything we learned on the EMBA so far, from dealing with people to using the strategic management frameworks for assessments and so on. So it ended up being a very, very good project to work on. And as I said before, you know, my TCP team members, we have bonded so strongly, more so than the average in the cohort. And the only shame is that we didn't manage to go to Iceland, but we will when this COVID madness is over.
That's fantastic to hear, and what a kind of diverse set of different projects too, and different roles that people played within their projects. So Nicoletta's got a follow-up question about individual projects. Now, Brooke, I know you touched on your individual project already. Emma and Anchi, I know you're kind of deep in the individual project world at the moment. Are you happy to talk a little bit about them?
I actually submitted my individual project on Monday, so I'm feeling very pleased with myself for getting that done. So I'm happy to jump in and answer a little bit about that, because it's very fresh in my mind, but not too raw. So yeah, the individual project is obviously another opportunity, like the team consulting project, to again broaden your horizons, pick something you're interested in. It doesn't have to be related to what you do in your day job. In fact, it's when through some of the careers conversations that we had during the the kind of personal development side of the EMBA, we were almost encouraged to think about, where do you want your career to take you, and how can your IP support you, your individual project IP, how can it support you on going in that direction? So I chose to investigate how the public sector supports climate change innovation through working with entrepreneurs. So for me, that was picking up on the climate change side, which I'm passionate about, but also actually like the entrepreneurship side, which is a direction I might want to go, and then looking at it from holistically from the public sector perspective, which is where I work. So it's kind of drawing together a bit of a Venn diagram of like what I know about, what I'd like to know about, and what maybe I want to do. So that was the thing about the IP is you actually you don't have that much time to do it. It's not like a traditional master's thesis. It's not like a traditional PhD. You're not working on it full time. So you need to pick a topic area that's small enough that you can research it in enough depth to provide something beneficial and useful during the project process, but broad enough that it keeps you interested and that it provides something new. So I think personally, I felt like I struck that balance, and maybe there was one point in about January, February time where I did say to my husband, I'm actually a bit bored of my topic now, but you're kind of really, really deep in it by then. So ultimately, I think I'm actually pretty pleased with what I handed in on Monday. So yeah, it was a good experience.
Well, congratulations on submitting on Monday. Anchi, how did you choose your IP topic?
For me, it was a continuation on what I had done for my team consulting project. My subject is looking at the recent infrastructure major projects in the UK and lessons learned as were published by the Department of Transport, how they may be applicable to the Icelandic renewable energy sector, where they have just released their energy vision for 2050, in which they say they want to become carbon neutral by 2040 and entirely independent of fossil fuels by 2050. So I think sustainability is is a big topic. It's something I'm interested in. It's something, hopefully, with the help of the IP and the EMBA in general, that helps me transition onto another sector. So I think for me, maybe a little bit cheeky, but I was able to build on what I had already done for my TCP onto the project. Although I haven't finished, so I don't know how it's going to go.
Fingers crossed for you.
Thank
and
you.
that's something we hear a lot, people using their individual project to kind of sandbox ideas that they might have for a move to a new sector or a new business, that sort of thing. So it's a real opportunity to kind of get out of your comfort zone.
Jack,
Yeah.
if I could add to that thought, I can say that several people from my cohort ended up using their IP to research a new idea and then hold themselves out as experts on that idea. And they ended up creating small consultancy businesses for themselves that allowed them to escape the career they had before and do something that they're much more passionate about. Others used it to sort of sandbox ideas that they use to create a more traditional business or startup from. So a lot of people used it to create a lot of traction and make a lot of connections.
Great. So we've got a question from the audience. Somebody asked how supportive your companies were in applying for and undertaking the Executive MBA. Brooke, could you elaborate first?
Mine's an unusual case. Working in a law firm in the US, I couldn't let them know I was on the program. For this reason, Oxford wasn't ever going to work because their schedule just, wasn't going to let me do this quietly. So yeah, mine wasn't supportive, but several others were. And a lot of companies I heard actually use paying for the MBA as an excuse to keep you there longer.
Emma and Anchi. Emma, what was your experience?
Well, not quite as restrictive as Brooks, but yeah, I mean, I didn't get any financial support from my employer and working in the public sector. I got support, in terms of the application. I got some support in terms of study leave and taking time to attend electives and things like that. So that was quite good. I think, yeah, it's a real mixed bag, but I did also benefit from receiving the women's scholarship on the EMBA. So because I knew that my employer was not going to be supportive of financially, I was able to put together a really strong application from the start for the women's scholarship. So I would say, I mean, I mentioned the finances at the beginning, when you're making sure that you're personally ready for the course, but I would also say make sure that you're clear about what support your employer will or will not give you, so that you can plan your applications for scholarships, director's scholarship, hardship award, that kind of thing, fully aware of what you're taking on as well.
Thank you. And on the women's scholarship, if anybody is hoping to apply for the women's scholarship this year, you still have until the 19th of April to get your application in and apply for that scholarship. So it's, if that's something you're after, don't wait until the last deadline for that. Anchi, what about you in terms of organizational support?
So TfL is very supportive of further education of their staff, but one thing they will not do is pay for it. So I had plenty of support in terms of study leave, as well as time to actually go to Cambridge and attend lectures. Yeah.
Thank you. Now we've got a question from somebody in the audience asking what it's like to have children whilst on the Executive MBA. Would you recommend it? And do you think it's too much juggling with work, kids, home, EMBA, and yourself and your careers too? Anchi, would you like to go first as the newest mother?
As the nearest, indeed. So I cannot recommend it highly enough. That was always one of my evil master plans, and it it went so well. So I had my daughter 4.5 months ago, and for the majority of my MBA studies, I was pregnant. I cannot say, maybe Emma and Brooke will speak about what it's like being pregnant and being a young mother, not in a pandemic, because my only experience has been in the pandemic. But I'd say if you want to do both, perhaps combining maternity leave and studying is actually going to make it easy for you to complete your studies, because I cannot imagine once you have a baby that your life is going to become somehow less busy. So perhaps perhaps if you're going to do both, doing them together is certainly doable, but perhaps recommended as well.
Sorry, struggling to unmute there. Thank you very much. Emma, how about you?
Yeah, so my baby was 11 weeks old when I started the EMBA in September 2019. So I'm still very little. And yeah, I mean, she was my first child, so I didn't really know what it was going to be like. And probably when she was about 6 weeks old, so about a month before I started the EMBA, I just thought, oh my God, I can't do it. There's no way that I can do this. And fortunately, I've got a very supportive husband, very supportive family who were like, when have you ever not done something that you set your mind to? You know, you'll be fine. And yeah, and it was totally fine. And similar to what Angie said, yeah, I was kind of making the most of my maternity leave because you know I'd had 9 months off work, so it was certainly the beginning part of the EMBA I wasn't at work, and also I actually think it was really good for my mental health because you know being a mum the whole time is definitely for some people, but personally I felt like my brain was going to mush. And so to have the EMBA to focus on really actually helped me to feel good about myself at a time when, you know, you're going through a lot of changes, both mentally and physically. So for me, it was really positive to have that intellectual stimulation to focus on.
That sounds fantastic. And Brooke, you're the only one who had all of that plus a long distance journey to Cambridge every time you came for the weekend. So how did you
do that? Well, okay, so I was a practicing lawyer. So that means that I'm used to selling my time. That's my inventory. And I'm used to managing it very carefully. It made me also very practical. So what the Cambridge experience got me from being overseas was an ability to compartmentalize. This is the time for school. And this is the time for work. This is the time for my kids. My kids were 1 and 3 when I started the EMBA. And if I'd gone to school locally, it would have been a mess because you would have classes at different times in the evenings. Then you would have different study groups meeting up at different times and places around the city, different social commitments, and every single one would be, ooh, do I choose to do it or do I hold back? And so having that built-in compartmentalization was super, super helpful for me to feel free to, you know, completely focus on work or home or school when I was in that setting. The other thing was I got a lot of studying done on the flights. Also, my children were young. I know there's a stereotype that young kids are harder to take care of than older kids, but now that my kids are 6 and 8, I will say the scheduling was so much easier back then. They didn't have activities. When I was home, they were fine just being with me. They didn't have school. You know, I could make their schedule fit around mine better than I could now that they're school age. So I'm very, very pragmatic about scheduling. And I felt that the overseas EMBA was far easier for me. Young kids was far easier for me than older kids or something local.
And so you've touched on how an overseas EMBA was a great choice for you. Was there anything else about kind of Cambridge that really stood out for you?
It's magical. I got to go to Hogwarts. I mean, it was amazing. The experience is very, very personal. I think Anchi and Emma would tell you the same. You walk around this town that you've never really spent much time in before, and you run into friends everywhere you go. Everything is beautiful, everything is historic. And when you think about how many things were achieved there before you were there, it lifts your expectations. I can tell you both my daughters now fully expect to go to Cambridge.
And Chi, what was it about Cambridge that really stood out to you as the place to take your MBA?
Well, I think it's practically speaking, comparing the Cambridge MBA with other programs, the scheduling element and the curriculum and just the general vibe that I got when I went to an information session felt overall the best for me. And it is absolutely true. Having done it, I think one extra thing that made it special for me was just the diversity in the classroom. Specifically the women, I'm sure Emma will agree, the women in our class, they're absolutely outstanding and they come from absolutely everywhere. We've got a UN project manager who is on the ground in Sudan coordinating refugee facilitation. We've got physicists, we've got mathematicians, you know, all of the experts in all of the fields that you can think of, they were represented in my cohort, not just finance and banking, even though we have them as well. So that was actually a surprisingly good thing about the Cambridge MBA. And I got the feeling that that would be something to get during the information session when I met some of the other alumni during that event. And of course, you have the magical feeling of going to college dinners and all of those nice things and having the photos taken and all of that, which made it all the more enjoyable. But also from a practical point of view, I think when you have the business school, you also have the wider university. So through that, I was able to go to events that talked about subjects which I was interested in, and also the networking as well with the Cambridge alumni. So I think that's what made it very special for me.
Emma, how about you?
I think, well, maybe slightly differently from Anchi and Brooke. I always wanted to go to Cambridge, maybe like Brooke's daughters now. And so I actually applied to Cambridge for my undergrad degree and I got a place, and I didn't get the grades that I needed to actually secure my place. So I'd got an axe to grind with the University of Cambridge, where I felt like I needed to prove to myself that I could get a degree from the University of Cambridge. And also I needed to prove to Cambridge that they'd missed out on me the first time round. So I wanted to go back. And what was interesting for me as well, you know, was the fact that the Judge Business School is part of the Faculty of Engineering. So there is actually quite a lot of engineers on the cohort. That might be an advantage or disadvantage depending on your perspective. But the fact that it gave access to engineers both on the cohort but also in the wider Cambridge ecosystem was also important to me, and that came into its own both in the TCP and in the IP when I was able to use some of those connections to get access to people, for example, in the Institute for Manufacturing, which I might not have otherwise been able to access if I'd been, you know, at a different school. So I think there was two benefits there, and Chi and Brooke have already said it, but going to Cambridge is magical. And yeah, and Chi and I maybe only had 6 months of that before COVID started, but I look back on those college dinners and that just walking, you go to your matriculation, you're walking around Cambridge in your academic gown, and I tell you what, you feel special. So it is really great. It is really good.
Fantastic. An axe to grind is like the best reason I've heard for applying for an MBA at Cambridge. More of a kind of a practical question, specifically for you, Emma. How do you think you made yourself stand out for your Women's Scholarship application? And I know that might be really difficult to answer, but any thoughts?
It is difficult to answer, because what I would say is that part of the reason my scholarship application stood out was because for more than 15 years, I'd been working in the area of advancing women. So I'd got a long history from starting from before I even went to university before that I could draw upon of times when I've looked to advance women's leadership. So I think, you know, if you've got a history of kind of activism and involvement in progressing opportunities for women, then you're going to be in a really great place to kind of apply for that scholarship. And then if you do, if you are successful on paper, then you're invited to give a presentation. Actually, Alison was there when I gave my presentation, which was done online. And I think I chose a topic that was sort of quite personal to me, which was around how urban design can fail to include people. And I didn't just focus on women, I actually focused on all people, whether that's ethnic minorities, people with disabilities, women as well. So I was able to speak with great passion about it because it was something that was close to my heart. So I suppose my two tips are, if you've got a good history of being a sort of woman active in advancing women, then you're already in a good position. And then pick something really close to your heart to talk about, because that will convey your passion for the subject.
Just to jump in quickly, yeah, I remember Emma's interview is very good. We've changed the process a little bit since that time. So if you're interested in applying, you just indicate on when you complete your application form, and then you receive an invitation from us to take part in we work with a third party called Kira Talent, and they have a platform whereby you record your own interview. So you hear some questions and then you answer the questions on camera. And so that's how we're doing it now. So it's a slightly different process. We have, just to reiterate what Jack said, we've got 2 scholarships for women, which pay 30% of the tuition fee. And as Jack said, the deadline for those is 19th of April. So if you're thinking of applying, it's definitely worth getting your application in before that time. If you don't get a scholarship, because we've only got 2, we do have bursaries as well. So, you know, if you miss out on a scholarship, we also have a number of bursaries to award to strong women applicants as well. So, you know, definitely worth trying that. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Alison, and thanks, Emma. Brooke, this could be a question more geared towards your experience. How do you feel the Executive MBA supported you in changing sector? You're muted, Brooke.
Okay, there we go. There wasn't as much support back then as there is now. I would say most of the support that I got was from my cohort. They would make connections with any company, any individual that you could want to meet. If someone is worth meeting, it's probably a 2nd degree connection to you on LinkedIn now with your cohort. And it was really the advice, the insight, and the access for my cohort that was most helpful. I am told that now Judge is offering more support to the MBAs who are looking to make a transition. For the women especially, that was one of the main reasons that the women in my cohort had signed up for the MBA. There were 19 of us out of 81, and I think 16 of us had signed up to make a transition.
Fantastic, thank you. And that kind of leads us to a question from a member of the audience asking what the female representation is like in Executive MBA cohorts. So we average around 30% women in our cohorts most years. I wonder if you could kind of talk to what that kind of felt like in the classroom, Brooke. Was it kind of a little bit less in your cohort than 30% in 2016?
Yes, historically it was lower. I will say that I went into this hoping maybe I can make 1 or 2 female friends. In my profession, women are about 10% of senior restructuring attorneys. So I didn't know a lot of women. And I ended up meeting this amazing group of women that are truly some of my best friends across a very wide variety of industries, skill sets. It was a very empowering, very, very supportive group, and I wasn't quite expecting that. I thought it, might not be as nice and warm and fuzzy as it was. It was a very, very pleasant surprise. Emma's smile tells me she's had the same experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we're lucky insofar as we've probably got slightly more women than that as well now. So I think, yeah, I think it was maybe 30, 35 women on our cohort. And well, Anshi's already touched on the fact that it's a very diverse group of women. We've got, a Bollywood film star, we've got, a former professional ballet dancer, we've got women who are leading in all sorts of areas of their careers, from banking to real estate. Like, what I find really great about this group of women is that personally, I think we actually inspire each other. And so I've drawn a lot of inspiration from what some of the other women are doing on the course, and not just on the course, but also, with the way that they're handling their lives and their children and their families. Like, it's the whole package with the women that you meet on the Ember. So yeah, I think it's a really great extension to the to my network, and similarly, yeah, there's not many women in construction. So it's and the more senior that you get in a male-dominated field like construction, the fewer women there are, and the more difficult it is to make those close connections, those people that you can turn to ask those questions, and that's where I think the Ember women come in.
Anchi, how's your experience been?
Similar to Brooks and Emma's, it's just been amazing to see all the women in my class thrive. And I also come from a male-dominated industry, which in rail we have about 4% female engineers and maybe 10 to 15% female staff in total. So it's really good to hear of the stories, of the success stories from all the other women in other sectors, and also how they're balancing and thriving in not only their professional careers, but also their lives as well in general. And we also have just, yeah, I learned so much from them as well, just because they are doing different things to what I'm doing. And some of them have very, very diverse and interesting stories to tell. I remember one day, because when you get together for the teaching weekends, it's very full on. You have lunch only in 45 minutes together, and you pack in eating and chatting at the same time. But there was this lady, software engineer. She's amazing. She's from India, and she started talking about her life story of how she has a wonderful, supportive father that got her to the position that she is in, having a wonderful career, a wonderful life, and everything is going so well. And I don't mind telling you, but we sat together, we kind of teared up a little. It was just a wonderful sort of bonding experience to hear of the support and that they had in their lives, as well as the obstacles that they overcame. So it's really inspiring, an inspiring group.
That's lovely to hear. Thank you. So we've got about 5 minutes left, everyone. So we'd love to get any more questions that you have. One question we have from a member of the audience, any advice for the application process? Now, we have a webinar coming up on that on the 5th of May. So if you'd like to join us for that, I will drop a link to that in the chat box. If you're looking to apply before the 5th of May, please get in touch, and we're very happy to talk to you about the application process.
Jack, could I make one comment on the application process? Could I just say, get on with it? You can always decline a place if you get offered one, but if you haven't applied, you're never going to find out. So get on with it.
Thanks, Emma. Also, I'm just jumping in quickly, Jack. Just to say, the application form, it's an online application form. You can access it through our website, and I think Jack's going to send you a link. But it's not designed to catch you out. It's just designed to make you think about your reasons for doing the programme, and so that the admissions committee, so that we understand why you want to do the programme, and obviously to find out a bit about your background and your experience. But it's not there's no difficult questions in it. And as Emma said, yeah, it's better to get on with it, really. You can always save it and go back to it at a later date as well. Thanks.
That's good advice. Thank you, Emma. So everyone, I'd like to put one more question to all of you. Starting with Brooke, maybe, what was your favorite memory from your time on the Executive MBA program? And obviously, Emma and Anchi, you've still got some memories to make. Brooke, it'd be great to hear from you first.
There were so many. One of my favorites, though, was we organized a fundraiser with no meetings, no budget, just sort of over WhatsApp during a boring lecture. And we raised enough money to send 2 girls to college in Nigeria to support one of our classmates' brand new charities. And we also raised enough to send 5 little orphan kids to elementary school. We just had all the EMBAs bring in booze from duty free. We set up a cash bar. We did it in the basement of Pembroke, and we had EMBAs perform, and it was amazing. Jo Bester was crying because she was laughing so hard. Many people said it was one of their favorite nights of the program, and we just threw it all together from nothing, just because that's the way EMBAs handle things. It's a magical group of people.
Even in the most boring lectures, you can still find time to
Yes, in between the cat memes. Yes.
Yeah. Anchi, how about you?
For me, it was right at the beginning, even though everything since has been so wonderful as well. But the orientation week was so full on. Every day was so challenging. And I remember all of us being so nervous, wanting to be the perfect self and wanting to, feel each other out as well, that every moment of it, looking back, was very much cherished. And it's like we went through something difficult together. We have that common shared experience now that I think that's what carried us, 100 odd people through the pandemic, not seeing each other for well over a year, but still having that connection. So orientation week, every moment of it was very, very good.
Fantastic. And Emma?
Yeah, I agree. The orientation week was fantastic, and it was a great chance to start to meet people and make friends and so on. We had a fantastic Christmas party, which was pre-COVID as well. So that was actually the first time I'd been out with my husband and got all dressed up and everything since my baby had been born. So that was a really special night for me, and it was in St. Catherine's College, which like many of the Cambridge colleges is just a really beautiful setting to have an event like that. And also I think the team consulting project for me was probably one of the best experiences. And when we culminated in our presentation, and when this guy from the United Nations, who we'd invited but never expected would actually come, turned up and started asking us questions and stuff, I really remember thinking, like, I've done something big here. And I was just, I was so proud of my work and my team's work. So that's going to stick with me forever.
That's fantastic. So just to close, I wonder if all of you have maybe one piece of advice to anybody considering applying for the program, or who's maybe started an application or thinking about enrolling on the program. Emma, it would be great to hear from you first.
Well, apart from just get on with it, I think put your best foot forward. This is no time to be modest. This is a time to put your biggest and best achievements and really draw them out on paper, or on your online application, and really don't be modest.
Anchi, any advice from you?
I think Brooke already touched on it, but compartmentalization is very important, and that's very going to be very useful in managing everything if you decide to do an EMBA. So start thinking about how you might do that. I think it would be useful.
Thank you. And Brooke?
So my advice is actually about once you've accepted your place, commit to yourself and to your cohort that you are going to drop your LinkedIn self and be your true authentic self. We had a moment during our orientation week where everyone just sort of seemed to silently do the same thing. And we just became so close so quickly. And it made for an incredibly powerful 2 years plus. I mean, we have something like a 75% return rate for electives. We're a very, very close cohort. And it's that dropping your LinkedIn self, putting your guard down, being authentic. And when you share the things that are challenging to you, people will have advice, insight, connections, ideas that will help you get past that.
That's great advice. Thank you very much. So we're at 6 o'clock. Thank you everyone very much for joining us today. Brooke, Anchi, Emma, thank you so much for being wonderful panelists this evening and answering everybody's questions. Alison has dropped an email address in the chat box if you'd like to get in touch with the admissions team at all with any questions that you have. But apart from that, I think all the stuff to say really is thank you again, and I hope you all have a lovely rest of week and weekend ahead. Thanks all.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you. And feel free to send me a message on LinkedIn if you have any personal questions you want to ask about the program.
Same here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.